Please welcome our moderator, Sebastian Turner, Verlag der Tagesspiegel.
Thank you. You are an incredible audience. After 2 days of filling up your hard drive, you're still there. It's wonderful. For the last session, we will turn things a bit around. We will start with the audience in the beginning. And I have a first question. Who of you is a good practitioner in basketball? Here. So please tell me, what did you learn over the last 2 days?
It's definitely not about basketball. I feel like, so my background is in engineering, and I did
And basketball.
and basketball and digital marketing. So this is actually my first time being in any think tank, and I feel like it's sort of changed my perspective a lot.
Wonderful. Okay. Now you know you get a question, what you learned or what you liked. Who would like to answer next? Sin. No. Okay. Julia. Please. What did you learn? What did you like? What should have been learned by others?
I think we realize that we have a great network of think tanks, and there are many solutions waiting for solving our global problems. Wow, I got it. And I don't play ball well. So for me, this was an interesting conference because I'm a psychologist, and I was speaking about health psychology. But what I was really struck by, when I first came, I was wondering what I would take away from this global, sort of focus on economics and solutions. And I was struck that so much of what is being inquired about is the narrative and the meaning and identity. And I was struck that all of the constructs that are really being examined at this level are psychological constructs. And so I felt like I felt very much at home because there is an integration of psychology, social psychology, into this focus on economics and solutions.
So we did well.
Yeah, it was fantastic.
Thank you. This will be the only panel you don't raise a question if I don't hand over the mic. So go ahead.
No, I want to be frank, and the thing is, what I understand is the challenges are many. The solutions are complex, but we need to work together.
That's a good one. John, you are monitoring the G20 from the very beginning.
Mm-hmm.
What is that we should have learned?
Well, what I learned was one, narrative, two, narrative subsidiarity, and then I learned that Chancellor Angela Merkel was a global champion of gender equality. She spoke so well and so long about it yesterday and had a round of spontaneous applause from everyone in the world. So I think it's the G20 gender commitments we should monitor, and then once we see the record, focus on how we can get it to do a better job.
Thank you. Oops. Anyone else with some experience in basketball? I guess no one will raise his hand. Well, there is a hand. There you go.
Thank you. My name is Ivan, and I have just a key message. Inviting all of you guys who are transforming already the world, keep transforming your inner being. Once you connect with your inner being, you're able to interact with the others, and therefore you gain lot of trajectory in social cohesion. And this leads to moving from an economic system to a real economic system.
Thank you. Now let me introduce a couple of experienced basketball players and think tank leaders and experts on the topic to discuss. Let me begin with Laura Jeitmann. Is that properly pronounced? Yeah, wonderful. You are the G20 Finance Deputy. Please have a seat at our table from Argentina. You made all the way representing the Argentinian government. Gustavo Martinez, you are the Managing Director of the Argentinian think tank, I hope I pronounce it properly, CARI. C-A-R-I, how do you pronounce it, CARI?
International Council for International Relations.
And you are part of the T20 team of Argentina. Yashino-san will represent Japan.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us. You are, after an impressive academic and public service career, you are today the Dean of the Institute of the Asian Development Bank,
Yes,
representing the G20 presidency
next
of the year
year.
to come.
Yes, thank
Please
you.
have a seat. Then we welcome a G20 veteran, Colin Bradford, well experienced on this panel. Thank you for joining us. I cannot mention all academic and public service positions you had in Yale, Columbia, American University, etc. So he is a Washingtonian, and by now he does not seem to be mad. So there are still people that are responsive to human impulses. And I recognize he can express himself in more than 140 characters. Very strange for a Washingtonian.
Don't be so sure.
Finally, it's Dennis Snower, our host, president, mastermind. I will not ask anyone about his sports or basketball capacities, but I'll ask you something other pretty simple. Laura and Gustavo, the Global Solutions Initiative was started to be helpful for you. Is it helpful for you?
For me? Oh, okay. You told me that she was.
That's a trick.
It's a trick? Okay.
That's a trick. No, she has a little more to think about whether it was really helpful or she's just polite.
Okay, so could you repeat the question, please?
Oh, sure. Is this conference, is the think tanks collaborating, supporting you? Is that helpful for the Argentinian T20 process? Be relatively frank.
Yes, it's very, very helpful for us. We had a very good relationship with KIL, is the organizer of this summit, and I think this summit was very important for me because for my institution and CPEC, that is our co-chair, we are co-chairing the T20, Argentine T20, and it's very important for me because somebody told about Julia. She told about network. So I think it's very important for this. And to confirm that we are doing a very good job with the Argentine T20, because I heard a lot about mutualism, and I think that we are doing a great job with global solutions to support the mutualism. So we are working. So I'm watching you because you told me about the time. So don't push me. So okay, no, we're doing a very good job with our task forces. We have 10 forces that have they take into account the more important areas that are connected with mutualism. So always it's important for us to
Wonderful.
come here and learn.
Thank you. Laura, was it helpful for not only T20 but G20 as well?
So for the Argentine government, the T20 is something not from the government, but from all. And we think that the engagement groups in general, and the T20 I'll talk in particular, are fundamental because the legitimacy of the T20 rests heavily on the community buy-in. And the engagement groups are key to achieve that. That's why we are very keen on working with the engagement groups. We are in all the events, we interact a lot, and they are very supportive of our presidency, and we are very supportive of their initiatives. The T20 in particular, I think it's super important. Maybe I'm biased due to my academic background, but it's needless to say how important research and ideas are important to enrich the discussions of ministers, of leaders, and to inform and improve public policies. So the T20 and the ideas that you are bringing to the table and that we as government are getting to feed the discussions, the documents, are really high level and a contribution and a value added to our presidency, as I think to other presidencies in the past. And also I think that this event and the work of the T20 in general, and I'm very proud of the work of the T20 that Argentina is doing this year with a huge participation in the Inception workshop and many events to come. 140 think tanks from 45 countries. I think it's because the T20 is not only about the leaders' declaration, the communiques, but about forging relationships between countries, between institutions. And events like this and the work of the T20 and the massive effort our colleagues in Argentina are doing in gathering so many think tanks with the support of Germany and with help of this initiative of the Global Solutions Ongoing is very important to forge those relationships that in times of peace are key. So we are very happy in Argentina to support the work of the T20 and the engagement groups in general.
Yashino-san.
Yes.
Having in sight the Japanese presidency just a couple of months ago, ahead, sorry for that, a couple of months ahead, do you feel this could be helpful for your presidency as well?
Yes. How think tank proposals be connected with politics, policies, and that connections are very important. Usually think tanks, there are two ways. One is looking at theoretical, empirical model, very constructive models, then propose something. And another one is just ideas. But those two has to be combined together. And then addressing to general public, politicians, so that they understand what is going on. Secondly, I learned a lot in Berlin, how to organize conference events. Well prepared. I attended many conferences, workshops. This is one of the best prepared workshops.
Colin, Dennis in his opening remarks called for a human face of multilateralism.
Right.
Did you see one over the past 2 days?
Yes, I did. I'm a little bit worried about Dennis going home with a swelled head by the time this is all over. Because, Dennis, last year, at this very time, you concluded the Global Solutions Summit with a call for economies serving people. And I took this, as you know, very much to heart. And I think you've managed to maintain that theme here. The G20 with a human face is only one of the ways in which you express that, but you kept bringing to us in your opening remarks yesterday, in your opening remarks today, you pushed the envelope even further. And I urge all of you to find the written speech that Dennis has done, which elaborates even more his ideas. So it seems to me that as you know, that I think we're at a turning point in the world economy where we've had a combination of sort of short-term structural issues that have come up as a result of the financial crisis in 2008, combined with some new impacts of technological change that are currently affecting the response of the economy to macroeconomic policy, along with the longer-term trends that have been anticipated here on digitalization and artificial intelligence and other aspects which are disrupting the labor markets and the prospects for keeping social cohesion going. So I think we see an ample evidence of a challenge where the normal macroeconomic stimulus to the economy is not generating sufficient growth and especially jobs to produce social outcomes that are politically sustainable. So we really have, I think, a crisis of institutions right now where the market economy itself, failing as it is to produce social outcomes that are politically sustainable, have now eroded the legitimacy of democratic governance and governance of other forms that have similar problems guiding their economies. So it becomes crucial that we capitalize on this political moment to turn the ship of the market economies towards producing better social outcomes. And you've outlined a whole range of issues, and we in the Vision 20 have also worked through a set of values, discourses, a call for new politics, innovative policies, and trying to work up an agenda of options for essentially steering the ship in a different direction so that in the future we get better social outcomes from the market economy. I mean, here in Germany, the social market economy is a concept which isn't as widely shared around the world as it might be. And so there may be elements here which guide the futures of other market economies. But the other thing you did today, Dennis, was you enlarged our vocabulary still again. I mean, over and over again, you and others brought up the word empathy. You brought up the concept of empowerment, that it wasn't enough to employ people, but you had to empower them. That maybe GDP growth and jobs weren't the end-all to be-all, but rather we had to think about meaning in a larger sense. You talked about narrative subsidiarities, which, and the alignment from local villages to cities to the national level to the globe. So you've managed to. And I was taken by your remarks a minute ago that as a psychologist, a social psychologist, you found resonance of what was being said here to your own discipline, which shows that economics, we're not going to do this with economics alone, that's for sure. And so we need a kind of multidisciplinary, multi-professional approach over the long term to generate new ideas about how to make this transition and steer the ship of the economy towards better social outcomes. So I salute you for enlarging our vocabulary, expanding our minds, getting us to think about all kinds of other things, because I think this is the only way. We are facing a moment of systemic transformation on a number of different levels. In the last panel, we just talked about urbanization, climate change, and social development. So it's just not carry on as usual, tweak the policies that we already have to get us where we need to go. We have to do something different. So thank you for getting us to think imaginatively about the future.
We touched and covered and discussed so incredibly many issues over the past 2 days that it's impossible to sum all of them up in this panel. However, Argentina has hit 3 core issues, if I report them properly. It's food security, it's the future of work, and it's infrastructure for development. And Dennis, you picked the name for this conference, which is a bit different to your personality, not very modest. It's Global Solutions, could be even German. Now, what was solved during the past 2 days in your conference?
I always get the easiest questions. I think one could, at this point, feel tempted to go to the micro level and saying, I like this particular suggestion and that particular suggestion. But I'd like to go to a broader context, and that is to address the social terrain in which we deal with our problems and see whether a solution lies in the social terrain that we may have changed in this gathering right here. Right. Yesterday, we heard a very inspiring speech by Jeff Sachs, where he looks at the entire globe and he sees there's climate change and biodiversity loss and all sorts of disasters coming. And he thinks, all right, now how are we going to manage this? The only way to do it is just forget everything except the problems that we face and now solve them. Forget the national borders, which he explicitly denounced, and focus on the real world, the reality, and the problems that we have assembled. Now, what I would like to introduce here is just like we face a physical terrain, a geographical terrain, and political terrain that divides us by mountains and rivers and national boundaries and so on, we also face a social terrain of identities, some of them in conflict, some of them more cooperative. And to ignore this social terrain and just say, well, look, focus on the problem, forget the social terrain, is doing something that we are simply unable to do as human creatures. And so if we are really interested in dealing with the physical problems that we have generated, then we need to tackle the social terrain and make sure that although we are all different, we somehow manage not to come into conflict with one another and somehow manage to avoid pursuing very selfish short-term solutions. This is a difficult one because evolution has taught us to deal with the me-us problem. I am selfish and I want as many resources for myself, but I have to deal with my tribe or my family and share, and that's the us problem. And we've managed that. And moral values and norms do this. What we're not good at is dealing with the us-them problem. That we have societies that are pitted against one another, and us, our larger social group, needs to cooperate with them. Evolution hasn't taught us that because we didn't need to do that in the savannah. And so the G20 needs to focus on partly these physical problems that we've generated in the financial sphere and economic sphere, but partly also these social problems. And if we look at how to do this, then I think going back to the issues that you've discussed, which is we're interested not only in material well-being, but also empowerment and social belonging and much else. Take these aspects of our human psyche seriously. Make some attempt to measure them in ways that are analogous to the way we've measured GDP. And this is not utopian. The OECD has made a lot of progress, the World Bank has, and so on and so forth. And then with this measurement, introduce some impact effects and reporting. If we can somehow do this, then we would be enabled to focus our minds beyond this conference on pursuing different goals. Now, one of the things about this conference that I find really interesting is Evan Davis said, aren't we in danger of creating our own social echo chamber? We all agree with one another and who cares? I don't agree with that. I believe we are all different and we have managed to understand that we face common problems that require us to bridge social divides. If you go, let's say, to the United States and say, oh, you Americans, you're all the same, you're all pledging allegiance to the flag, does that mean that this is a homogeneous country? By no means. But there is some sense of affiliation. And if we can create this sense of affiliation here among people who are very different, but who seem to realize that we need to come together to deal with these problems, then I think we've achieved something, and I feel that here. I'm sorry, I've spoken far too long.
I have some doubt. If I have some doubt in the last point you made, if I exclude myself, I had the feeling that the license to enter the room was an IQ of 140 plus. And I'm not sure whether that is the average, but certainly we have guests from many regions and areas and fields of knowledge. However, I would like to touch a bit, we have not a lot of time, but I would like to touch for a second again the Argentinian core points. Maybe we do not have solutions yet, but maybe you have areas that you wish to invite the brains around in the room to think of in these three fields. Maybe you would like to elaborate, Laura, if you start, which core question is aligned for you for food security, future of work, infrastructure for development? Just one highlight if you can manage that.
Great, thank you. Following on what Dennis said, I think these priorities reflect that we shouldn't forget that the G20 is about people, and we wanted a people-centered presidency, as President Macri, when we started the presidency, highlighted. And that's reflected in how we chose the priorities of infrastructure for development on the future of work. Chancellor Merkel yesterday talked a lot about this, Minister Scholz as well, and how to understand the anxiety that people are feeling nowadays and that our leaders show that we are prepared to embrace technology and this new economy, and we are prepared also to tackle the challenges, mainly distributional, as we were talking in the table before. So the overarching theme of our presidency is building consensus for fair and sustainable development, following this issue of having a people-centered presidency. And there are many issues, as you mentioned, as we heard throughout all the conferences, so all the conferences that we have to build consensus on. And I think that the big picture of this conference and the contribution to our priorities is that we reinforce the need of more dialogue, and that's another core of our presidency, the dialogue of talking to each other, to talking to all members, and keeping everyone, despite of the disagreements, in the tent. And that's a main goal of our presidency. On the particular priorities that you mentioned very well, on future of work, we are collaborating very closely with the T20. Ministers and governors discuss a diagnosis of the current and potential impacts of technology in different variables like growth, productivity, living standards. And there is an optimistic view from our ministers that, as we saw in past technological revolutions, we will see in the medium and long term increase in the living standards and productivity and growth. However, we should tackle some challenges in the medium run, as I mentioned recently, mainly distributional. So what we are working on with the T20 and with all the members in the G20 in the finance track in particular is for July, for the next ministerial meeting. We are presenting ministers a menu of policy options where we will have very high-level objectives like helping workers in the transition or closing the technological divide. And we will have some policies related to those objectives that we hope that then ministers and leaders find useful to be prepared to embrace the opportunities of technology and mitigate the challenges or make this work for all. We are working mainly in the finance track on issues on data, on measurement, as you just mentioned, and also on issues on data, privacy protection, issues on competition, as Minister Scholz mentioned today as well, given the market structure of this new economy. issues on the tax policies and all the things that are the core of the finance track, tax benefits, transfers, and how to adapt the safety nets of countries to these new ways of employment and of working. And we hope that this menu will be useful, and we are also coordinating very closely with the Sherpa track that is dealing with issues related to skills and education. So by the end of the year, we hope to have a very good outcome in terms of the future of work with all the inputs from the engagement groups and working together the two tracks of the G20 to show our citizens that we understand the anxiety, we understand the situation, we've been studying it, and we are prepared to profit from what's coming next.
Gustavo, you have now the option to make a call for papers that you really need.
Yes.
Please.
Yes. Yes. I'd like to highlight the intellectual work, because, for example, you said that we were expecting for 47 policy papers, but at the moment we have received 78.
So
there are more than coming.
Too many papers, so you would like to send some back, or?
No. No, the intellectual work always is a value. So, but I think it's remarkable the work that the tax forces are doing, because we are receiving papers from experts from different countries, 149. So I think this is the best way to contribute to the multilateralism. That different people from different countries. So I think it's a good job. Focusing on the G20, She told about the G20 and the G20 priorities.
There is a more or less obvious link in one of the fields between the Argentinian presidency and the Japanese. In the key policy recommendations that, where's the camera, please? My camera. In this, you can download this, and you will find in chapter 2, you will find some seminal work of Yoshino-san. You have elaborated on how to pour private money into green investments and leverage that by taxes.
Yes.
Can you give us a short glimpse of what your thinking is?
Yeah. The development of green energy is very slow, because performance or rate of return from green finance is very low. And many people tend to use traditional energy sources because it is cheaper. But green energy can produce very good environmental things, but other energy can produce CO2, NOx pollution. Then those are negative externality. It should be charged tax, those negative externality, and bring those tax revenues to green energy as a subsidies. Then the rate of return for green energy will remarkably increase compared to other traditional energies. That will promote much more private investment into green energy. Secondly, traditionally, many developing institutions produced big dam, big nuclear power. But nowadays, technology has developed. Even small river can produce very high efficient motors. In Cambodia, Vietnam, they can start those small energy sources and solar power, wind power into the village. And that kind of innovation will make energy, environment, infrastructure will drastically change.
Thank you. Although Dennis told us to stay on the meta level, I guess this gives us a feeling how these concepts can really go to the ground and change the fate and life of many people around the world. If I may return to the meta level of Dennis, Colin, you are observing the G20, the G7, G8. I'm completely confused with all the numbers, but you're observing that, and maybe we have sometimes a G19 because your friend in Washington may have no time to travel. If it's not meeting in this strange place in Florida. How did the role of the think tanks in the G something process develop over the years? what is the most recent development? What is your advice how it should go on?
Yeah, well, I would say there are 3 phases, and one of them is the phase we're in right at the moment. So the way it started initially was that, and this involved different think tanks who operated this way, but we at Brookings certainly operated this way, which is we managed to, for the first 3 or 4 years, we managed to help G20 officials in the host countries. We started with Gordon Brown's G20 team. We went there in February. We asked them, give us the 5 most important issues you'd like us to help you with. We had money to give people to travel, thanks to CG in Canada, actually. And we chose 15 people and took them, and we had a whole day with Gordon Brown's team, headed by John Cunliffe. Gordon Brown opened the meeting. So here you had immediate access to officials and able to give them ideas, and in that case, some of the ideas, whether from us or elsewhere, turned up on the April 2nd communique from the London G20 Summit. So that model of sort of working in one-on-one with the officials of the host country went on for some years until in 2011, Andres Rosenthal is here, I don't know whether he's still here, but with Lourdes Aranda, the G20 Sherpa for Mexico, we decided in Langdon Hall in December of 2011 with Paul Martin there as well from Canada, the Prime Minister of Canada and really the father of the G20, we decided to institutionalize the T20. And I must confess, at the time, I thought we were institutionalizing this sort of very small inside model of what we were doing. I never envisioned 1,000 people gathering like this to discuss T20 issues. So there was a gradual transition from there to this. And then I think, Dennis, you've actually taken this to another level, because this format is not the format that normally T20 things tend to be less, this is highly interactive, highly dynamic, highly spontaneous. You can't come here, I've got files here full of script that I could have been enthralled you with, but instead you end up responding to the immediate situations. Yes, you're welcome.
Very kind.
Yeah, you're more than welcome. So, but the point of it is that I think that also what's happened is inevitably, as it's gotten larger, is that this engagement group has a meaning of its own. This gradually occurred to me and a number of other people that actually we don't need to worry just about feeding ideas to leaders, to national political leaders, although I think we should keep trying to do that, is that we in effect are leaders ourselves. Everyone in this room is a leader in their community somewhere. And the fact of the matter is that we are, even though we come from different places, different cultures, and have different perspectives, which is actually the blessing and the reason I thought from the beginning that we needed the G20 is because of the diversity within it, and why Mr. Trump needs to travel, because he needs this. The mechanism I always thought as an American, quite frankly, for having the G20 was to actually push on the United States exceptionalism and make it fit within us in a dynamic political context in which there were differences of views which the United States needed to be aware of and needed to take into account in making its own policy decisions internally and externally. So, but you've now transformed this into I think, an energy field of its own, where it has political meaning, has repercussions beyond the walls. It's interesting to see how the people who were left behind are not here in this conference, so people could criticize you for not inviting them, but they've been here and present on the minds of, I would say, a majority of the people, and a majority of the conversations have been concerned with the people left out. So this is a forum which works, in my view, and has a meaning that can go from presidency to presidency, year to year, as the problems and challenges evolve. And I think the only thing I would say that we need to transit is to think more clearly and directly about the political implications of the ideas that we have, and try to nurture and grow the political discourse and the ideas of political leadership. I've come to the view that leaders need to have passion, need to have vision, which is one of the reasons why we had the Vision 20, to get beyond the technocratics of all this, need to connect with their people, and need to deliver. So I think we need to think more clearly about leadership and how you connect policy wonk ideas to politics. so that they have political valence and political possibility within our countries.
Another addition that seems to root back to Dennis is adding the search for a narrative to the think tank process. Now, Dennis has suggested narratives, but the master narrative and the sister, daughter, son narratives and family of narratives.
Right, they have to align.
Now, the essence of this narrative is the term recoupling. I would like to ask Laura and Yoshino-san, could you briefly say how is this idea of recoupling, this narrative, relating to the region and the fields of knowledge you are familiar with? Please.
As we discussed in the G20, 10 years after the crisis, growth has picked up. Nevertheless, to achieve the original mandate of the G20 of achieving this strong, balanced, sustainable and inclusive growth, there is a lot of work to do. And a lot of work has to do with this of making the social parts and the economic parts together. Though, to be honest, as an economist, I feel that this is a social science and it's all about people. And the financial system and the governance and the macroeconomic coordination for why the finance track exists, it's all about people. And everything that happens, as an Argentine, I don't know how to explain it, in the financial markets, it affects people. Nevertheless, I think that it is important to transmit this, and this narrative is very helpful, that what we do at the G20 should resonate with our citizens. At the G20 in Argentina, we are very keen on that, not only involving all the voices within and across the country and across all the countries, but also even in the communiqué, when we are drafting it, we are thinking there should be lines that resonate with the people. When in March we achieved, I think, very successful and constructive discussion and language on trade, we have a phrase that already tells people why trade is important to improve living standards, to boost growth and productivity, and then we can mention Hamburg language and etc. We also highlighted the need for more dialogue and action. So resonating with the citizens and with the people is very important, and I think that the G20 has a lot of work to do, not only to achieve its core mandate of make growth that it seems to be picking up more sustainable but more inclusive, but also in communicating better with the people. And for that, the work of the T20 and the engagement groups and to give this legitimacy with the community is fundamental. So that's why, from our perspective in Argentina, we think that it is key to build this and to achieve a successful presidency that makes us all proud.
Yoshino-san, yes. How is recoupling relating to the eastern majority of the world?
Yes, I'm from Asia, and Asia is slightly facing different problems with Latin America. So our T20 in next year added 3 different points. One is aging population. Demography is a big problem for Japan, Korea, China, and followed by Vietnam. And in those aging society, we have to prepare for good pension system and how to manage the society. Secondly, Asia is dominated by small and medium-sized enterprises, SMEs. And they are difficult to borrow money from banks. Startup businesses, we don't have venture capital. Then we need some crowdfunding to support them. Lastly, digital economy, how to analyze big data. And income disparity may be mitigated by data analysis and also technological progress. Everybody can access to good education by mobile phone. Then the digital technology will not widen the income gap, but the quality of education will be promoted, and everybody can access to various data. So I hope a new technological progress changes the environment will work for reducing the income disparities.
So the recoupling theme, just to pick one of the elements you said, will get a new dimension between the generations.
Yes.
That's a very interesting element. We have so little time for all your thinking and ideas, and thank you. We have another 30 seconds, and Laura, you told me you would like to invite the participants, and we are more than happy to listen to that.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much, Dennis, and thank you very much to the organizers for inviting us to the conference and for the T20 for co-organizing it. I wanted to invite you all to Buenos Aires to the T20 summit in September. We will be very happy to meet you all there, to continue receiving your contributions and feedback to enrich our discussion in the T20. Wir treffen uns in Buenos Aires in September. Herzlichen Dank.
Thank you. We are just seconds away from the end of this conference, but I would ask you to welcome for just a farewell note the boss of the organizing team who represents all the people who did all the work. So Markus Engels, please come up and take a warm welcome and just invite us for the next.
Thank you very much, Sebastian. 2 more minutes to go, then the conference is over. I have to thank, first of all, the Argentinian presidency, G20 and T20. It was an excellent cooperation. Thank you very much. That was brilliant. Secondly, I would like to thank all speakers and moderators who were sharing their views, their arguments, and their ideas with us. That was brilliant, and I really learned a lot. Thank you for this. Thirdly, of course, I would like to thank all our partners which made that conference possible, which make the work of the Global Solutions Initiative possible. That was great. Of course, I want, first of all, thank you as an audience for your participation, for your recommendation, but for your openness, for the spirit and the atmosphere you created here. And I think this is a global solution in itself. And I really have to thank for this. That was a wonderful 2 days. That was great. Thanks for that. Let me please name a few colleagues who are really important. I would personally thank Katrin Kupke from the Kieler Institute for the World Economy. And I would really like to thank Agnes Michalik from my team. She did a wonderful, great job. Thank you, Agnes. That was an experience. And finally, I have to thank the brain, the heart, and the visionary of Global Solution, the man who really made all of this possible, who is inspiring not only his teams and you, he's inspiring with his ideas to change the world to a better and create global solutions. Dennis Noah, thank you very much. It's an honor to work with you. Thank you very much. I see all of you in March 18th and 19th here in Berlin for the Global Solutions Summit, Japanese presidency, 18th and 19th of March 2019 in Berlin. Have a safe trip home. Thank you very much indeed. All the best.